They called him the future of tennis, the chosen one, the next Nadal. At 19, he had already done what most pros spend a lifetime chasing, a Grand Slam title, world number one, the world watching. Carlos Alcaraz wasn't just winning, he was electrifying, jumping drop shots, no-look passing shots, screaming forehands. He made tennis feel alive again. The media crowned him, the fans adored him, the ATP built their next era around him, but somewhere between the trophies and the headlines, something shifted. Injuries started creeping in, the schedule got brutal, the pressure unbearable. He said it himself. Mentally, I must say, I'm not well, I'm not strong. He still smiled for cameras, still shook hands with grace, but behind the scenes, the golden boy of tennis was carrying something no ranking could measure. And as Jannik Sinner rose, as losses piled up, as the next Nadal label tightened around his legacy, we were left with one haunting question. He's brilliant, but at what cost? All right, let's rewind. Before the injuries, before the headlines, before the pressure kicked in full force, there was just a teenager from El Palmar, skinny, smiling, and hitting forehands like he was born to do it. Carlos Alcaraz didn't just show up on the scene, he exploded. By 2022, the kid was already lifting the US Open trophy, 19 years old. World number one. Youngest ever. Boom. Just like that. The tennis world lost its mind. Andy Roddick said, "What a gift to the game he is." Jim Courier, "We didn't realize he'd be this good this fast." Fans called him the next Nadal, like same country, same fire, same forehand. But here's the thing, Carlos never asked for that crown. In his own words, "I don't like being compared to Nadal, but if they're comparing me to him, it means I must be doing something right." And yeah, he was. Those early matches, pure chaos, in the best way. Drop shots from nowhere, sliding on hard court, screaming like a warrior at 17-17 in a tiebreak. He wasn't just winning, he was fun. A shot maker with a smile. But let's not pretend the hype train didn't get crazy. There were articles comparing him to Roger, Rafa, Novak, all before he'd even played 10 slams. Olympics.com literally asked, "Is Carlos Alcaraz the next Rafael Nadal?" Give Me Sport called him a generational talent the sport's never seen. And while all of that was true, kind of, the question is, was it all too much, too soon? I mean, imagine being 19 and every time you win, people say, "You're the next GOAT," and every time you lose, it's, "What happened to the chosen one?" Carlos kept smiling, kept showing up, kept working, but you could feel it, the pressure building. He wasn't just a player anymore, he was a symbol, of what tennis was supposed to be after the big three faded. That's a lot for one guy to carry, especially when he's still figuring out who he is. And look, let's be real. Carlos delivered 5 Grand Slams by 22. That's insane, but behind those trophies is a kid who didn't just win matches. He inherited an expectation to be Nadal, to save tennis, to never lose, and that's where this story starts to shift. Because soon, the pressure would stop being invisible. It would start breaking through. Let's talk about the elephant in every press room since 2022, the Rafael Nadal comparisons. From the moment Carlos broke through, every interviewer, every commentator, every headline, it was always, how much of Nadal is in him? Is he the next Rafa? And look, we get it. Same country, same fighting spirit, same never say die attitude, but imagine trying to be yourself, while the whole world keeps telling you to be someone else. Even Carlos said it straight up, "I don't like being compared to Nadal," then with a small smile, "But if they do, I guess I'm doing something right." That quote right there, that's a 20-year-old trying to sound okay with something that can't be easy. Because here's the truth, most people won't say out loud, Carlos Alcaraz was never supposed to be Nadal 2.0. He was supposed to be Carlos 1.0, and you could feel that pressure starting to show. By mid-2024, when Sinner climbed to number one after Djokovic dropped out of the rankings, everyone expected Alcaraz to take it back. And what did Carlos say? So probably that pressure has killed me in some way. That's not just a quote. That's a confession. And he wasn't just playing tennis anymore. He was carrying the entire storyline of post-Big Three tennis. Juan Carlos Ferrero, his coach, tried to keep it grounded. Carlos loves the big points. He looks forward to them. That's what makes him special. And sure, it does. But even Ferrero knew the spotlight burns hotter when the whole tennis world needs you to be the savior. Now throw in social media. People on X, Reddit, YouTube, they weren't holding back. Some were hyping him like the second coming of Federer and Nadal Djokovic combined. Others, not so kind. One viral X post said, the establishment was so desperate for Alcaraz to be the GOAT, they piled ridiculous expectations on him. Reddit threads asked, is he crumbling under the pressure? And suddenly, it wasn't just fans rooting for him. It was fans waiting for him to fail, just to say they were right. And here's what no one really says. He's still just a kid. We're talking about a guy who went from playing juniors in 2019 to leading the ATP Tour by 2022. That's 3 years. 3 years to go from who's that to save the sport. Most players spend a decade figuring out how to deal with expectations. Carlos had 3 months. And yeah, he's special. Yeah, he's gifted. But when people start throwing around GOAT before you turn 21, that's not just praise, that's a burden. Because at the end of the day, you can only carry that narrative for so long before it starts carrying you. And sometimes it drags you down. All right. Now let's talk about the stuff no one wants to talk about. Because pressure, that's invisible. But injuries, those hit different. They show up. And for Carlos Alcaraz, they showed up way too soon and way too often. Let's look at the timeline. 2021 US Open quarterfinal versus Felix. He's flying. Then suddenly, pain. Leg injury, forced to retire. 2022 Paris Masters abdominal tear mid-match, out for weeks, missed the ATP Finals. 2023 Australian Open hamstring, pulled out before it even began. 2023 Monte Carlo wrist and back pain withdrawn again. 2024 Rio Open, twisted his ankle, on-court treatment, retired mid-match. 2025 Madrid. Both legs injured, yes, both. You don't get that kind of injury log by accident. This isn't bad luck. This is burnout, physically and mentally, because Carlos hasn't just been playing. He's been carrying tennis, and his body, it's screaming for rest. In February 2024, after Rio, he said something that got overlooked at the time. We have to keep the same level until November or December, until the last one of the season. He was trying to stay positive, but you could hear it in his voice. That wasn't excitement. That was exhaustion. Then came the Olympics, the gold medal match versus Djokovic. Carlos didn't just lose, he broke down. Tears on court. The pressure of representing Spain, it crushed him. He later said, I've never felt nerves like that. I couldn't control anything. Okay, pause. Let that sink in. This isn't just about a tennis match. This is about a 21-year-old cracking under the weight of expectation. And still, he came back because that's who he is. But the cracks, they didn't go away. August 2024, US Open. Mentally, I am not well. I am not strong. That's not just a quote. That's a red flag. That's a player sending up a flare. We love to talk about talent, about greatness, about legacy, but we forget something. These guys are human. They get tired, they get injured, they cry in hotel rooms, they wonder if they're disappointing everyone. Carlos isn't just fighting his opponents. He's fighting his own body, his own brain, and the idea that he has to be something bigger than himself. And that fight might be his toughest one yet. Here's the irony, right? Carlos Alcaraz is already building a legendary resume. At just 22, he's got 5 Grand Slams Olympic silver weeks at World, #1 wins over Djokovic, Nadal, Sinner, Medvedev, you name it, by the numbers. He's tracking ahead of Nadal, Federer, and Djokovic at the same age. But here's the uncomfortable truth. That path, it's not sustainable. Because legacy doesn't mean burning out at 25. It means still standing at 30, still swinging, still loving the sport. And right now, that balance between greatness and grit is on a razor's edge. Just look at what the legends did. Rafael Nadal managed his schedule like a surgeon, skipped tournaments, prioritized healing, still broke records. Novak Djokovic, obsessed over longevity, diet, flexibility, planning, still winning slams at 36. Roger Federer, master of pacing himself, picked battles, built a 20 slam legacy over 2 decades. Now compare that to Carlos. The pace he's going at, it's brutal. Back-to-back events, minimal recovery time, injury after injury, mental fatigue mounting, and fans, they want more, always more. More slams, more records, more highlight reels. It's like he's stuck in a loop. The more he wins, the more he has to win. One bad match, and is Alcaraz still the chosen one? Is Sinner now the king? What happened to Carlos? Let the kid breathe, man. 2025 Wimbledon. Jannik Sinner didn't just beat Carlos, he snatched the narrative. Suddenly the world was saying, maybe he's the guy? Maybe Sinner is the most composed of this generation. And honestly, Carlos looked drained, not beaten, drained, like someone who just needed a pause. A moment to remember why he loved tennis in the first place, commentators noticed. BBC called Sinner's win the ultimate vindication of an unflappable mindset. And what about Carlos? One viral fan post said his invincibility just got ripped from him like a thief in the night. That's the kind of narrative swing that breaks momentum. And in a sport like tennis, momentum is everything. So now we're left with this. Can Carlos Alcaraz be one of the greatest of all time? Absolutely. Yeah, he already is one of the most electrifying. But if he doesn't slow down, if he doesn't reset the pace, he risks burning out before the story's even halfway written. We've seen the champion. We've seen the injuries. We've seen the pressure, the weight, the expectations. But what about the kid behind the curtain? Because that's the part the media rarely talks about. Not Carlitos the prodigy, not Carlos the slam machine. Just Carlos. Let's rewind. Way back. He's not from some tennis dynasty. No private jets or elite academies growing up. Carlos Alcaraz was born in El Palmar, Spain, a working-class town. Humble beginnings. His dad, Carlos Sr., was a tennis coach. His mom, an IKEA sales assistant. Not agents, not former pros. Just parents trying to help their son chase something big. And get this, his grandfather converted a hunting club into a tennis court, so little Carlitos could have a place to play. That's not privilege, that's love. And that story, it's filled with moments that prove he's more than just a racket and a highlight reel. Wimbledon 2025. Carlos stops a match to check on a fan who fainted. In the middle of center court, in the middle of the match. Olympics. 2024, breaks down after losing to Djokovic, but still takes the time to praise Novak, thank his team, and hug his family. ATP Finals 2023. Admits he cried after a tough loss, not because of ego, but because he cares that much. You can't teach that. That's not coached, that's humanity. And maybe that's what makes him special. Not just the forehands, not just the trophies, but the way he carries himself when it's all falling apart. Because greatness isn't built in one season. It's carved out over years of joy, failure, pain, and persistence. And if there's one thing we've learned, Carlos will keep showing up. Win or lose, smiling or sore, ready to fight. Not because we expect him to, but because he wants to. So, no, Carlos Alcaraz is not the next Nadal. He's something different, something rare, something this sport desperately needs. A reminder that greatness isn't just about how many times you win, it's about who you become when the world expects you to never lose. Now it's your turn. Is Carlos being pushed too hard too soon? Can he handle the pressure long term, or should he pull back to protect his body and mind? Or is this just the price of greatness? We want to hear from you, the real fans, the critics, the dreamers. Drop your take in the comments and let's talk. Not just about tennis, but about what it really means to carry the weight of being the chosen one.